If I'm lost, it's not because the world failed me, because I refused responsibility. And that's hard to say, because blaming the world feels safer than blaming yourself. But let's be honest, most people aren't confused. They're avoiding ownership. They say they're lost, but what they really mean is, I don't want the weight of choosing. Because once you choose, there's no one left to blame. No parents, no system, no bad luck, no trauma card, just you and the consequences. So yeah, I was lost. Not spiritually, not emotionally, strategically, because I didn't want responsibility. And today I'm done pretending. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Being lost is comfortable. When you're lost, you're not required to win. You're not required to execute. You're not required to commit. Lost people get sympathy. Responsible people get pressure. And pressure is heavy. So people hide. They hide behind overthinking. They hide behind planning. They hide behind I'm still figuring it out. But listen carefully. You don't need clarity to move. You need courage to commit. And commitment terrifies people, because commitment exposes incompetence. When you commit, reality responds. And reality doesn't care about your potential. Reality only answers execution. That's why people stay lost for years. Because as long as you're lost, you don't have to face how average your effort actually is. People don't fear failure. They fear ownership of failure. Because failure with responsibility means you chose wrong, you moved wrong, you executed wrong, no excuses. And that shatters ego. So instead, people drift. They consume content, they listen to podcasts, they wait for signs. But here's the brutal truth. No signal is coming. Life doesn't send confirmation emails. You either move or you rot in indecision. And indecision is slow suicide. Not dramatic, not loud. Just quiet regret, stacking year after year. That's why lost people age fast. Because nothing drains a human faster than avoiding responsibility. So let me say it clean. If you feel lost right now, it's not because you lack direction. It's because you haven't owned a direction long enough to suffer for it. And suffering is the entry fee. Don't comment. Don't like. Don't pretend this didn't hit. Just sit with it. And if it made you uncomfortable, good. That means it's working. Why self-discovery is a lie. How weak identity is created. Why discipline isn't motivation, it's self-respect. And how responsibility forges dominance. Cold, precise, no mercy. No problem. We go back, but deeper. Let's kill the phrase first. I'm lost. Most people say that like it's a diagnosis, like it happened to them. It didn't. I'm lost usually means I don't want to choose. I don't want to commit. I don't want to be judged by results. I don't want to find out if I'm actually average, because choosing exposes you. As long as you're lost, you can pretend you're special. Potential feels better than proof. And that's why people stay in that state for years. Not because they can't move, but because moving removes the fantasy. Here's what no one tells you. Identity isn't something you find. It's something you earn. And you earn it through responsibility. When you avoid responsibility, your confidence becomes fragile. Your self-talk becomes noisy. Your opinions become borrowed. Your discipline becomes conditional. Because there's nothing solid underneath. That's why people who avoid responsibility change goals every few months. Change beliefs every year. Change personalities based on who they're around. They're not evolving. They're unstable. A man without responsibility is a man without gravity. Nothing sticks, nothing grounds him, nothing defines him. So he keeps asking, who am I? When the real question is, what weight am I willing to carry? Let's be honest. Most overthinking isn't intelligence. It's fear pretending to be depth. People say, I'm analyzing. I'm being careful. I'm waiting for the right move. No. You're avoiding accountability. Because action has consequences. And consequences require ownership. So instead, people think themselves into paralysis. They watch, they consume, they plan. But thinking without execution doesn't make you smart. It makes you harmless. And the world doesn't respect harmless people. Responsibility feels heavy because you're weak at carrying it. Not morally, structurally. You haven't trained for it. The first time you own your decisions, your chest tightens. Because now, wins are yours. Losses are yours. Excuses are gone. That pressure is unfamiliar. So people drop it. They go back to blaming, back to drifting, back to figuring it out. But here's the truth. Responsibility doesn't crush strong people. Avoidance does. Responsibility builds muscle. Avoidance builds anxiety. So if you feel lost, it's not because life hit the map. It's because you haven't decided to carry the weight of being wrong, being slow, being uncomfortable, long enough to become sharp. In part 3, we stop diagnosing the problem and start owning the solution. No motivation, no inspiration, just control. Don't agree with this out loud. Ask yourself one question instead. What responsibility have I been dodging? Because whatever that is, that's exactly where your direction is hiding. Responsibility as a system, not a feeling. No hype here. No speeches. Just structure. Stop trying to fix yourself. Here's the first mistake lost people make. They think something is wrong with them. So they try to fix their mindset, fix their confidence, fix their motivation. That's a distraction. You don't need fixing. You need assignment. Human beings stabilize when they're responsible for something concrete. Not emotions, not visions, not affirmations. Something that breaks if you don't show up. That's why responsibility works. It forces alignment. It forces routine. It forces seriousness. You don't become strong by understanding life. You become strong by being needed. Choose one hard thing and make it non-negotiable. Most people fail because they choose 10 easy things. Pick one hard thing, something measurable, something uncomfortable, something you can't fake progress in. And then remove optionality. Know if I feel like it. Know when I'm inspired. No emotional exits. You show up tired. You show up confused. You show up angry. Because responsibility doesn't care about your internal weather. Consistency builds authority first over yourself, then over reality. That's how direction forms. Confidence is unreliable. Structure isn't. Don't trust how you feel. Trust what you scheduled. Time blocks, deadlines, clear outputs. When your life has structure, your emotions fall in line. When it doesn't, your emotions run the show. That's why most people feel lost on free days. No structure, no anchor, no direction. Build systems so simple even your worst version has no excuse. That's maturity. Stop asking, is this who I am? Ask, can I repeat this even when it's boring? Repetition creates identity. Identity never creates repetition. That's why disciplined people don't talk about discipline. They talk about standards. Standards remove negotiation. And negotiation is where weak people leak energy. You want direction? Raise your standards and force yourself to meet them. Over time, identity will follow. So now you understand this. You were never lost. You were unassigned, uncommitted, unanchored, unpressured. Why people relapse into excuses. How to lock responsibility permanently. And how to live in a way where lost is no longer possible. Don't screenshot this. Don't save it. Execute something today that has consequences if you don't. That's how this starts. This is the end. No buildup. No comfort. Just ownership. This isn't motivation. This is a verdict. Why people relapse into excuses. Most people don't fail once. They relapse. They take responsibility for a week, maybe a month. Then life pushes back. They get tired. Results don't come fast. Nobody claps. So the mind starts whispering, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I chose wrong. Maybe I need clarity again. That voice isn't intuition. It's ego trying to escape pressure. Because responsibility exposes reality, and reality isn't flattering at first. So people downgrade their standards to protect their self-image. That's the cycle. Responsibility, discomfort, excuse, relief, stagnation. Break the cycle or repeat it forever. If you can walk away, you will. So stop designing soft lives. Hard code responsibility into your environment. Deadlines with consequences. Public standards. Clear metrics. Make failure expensive. Not emotionally. Practically. When running costs more than staying, discipline becomes automatic. That's how serious people operate. They don't rely on willpower. They remove exits. No escape hatches. No backup identities. No I'll pivot if it gets hard. Hard is the point. Responsibility kills the need for validation. Here's the quiet reward nobody talks about. When you fully own your life, you stop needing approval because you're too busy executing to negotiate opinions. Criticism loses power. Praise loses power. You don't need to be understood. You need to be effective. That's freedom, not happiness. Freedom, the freedom of knowing. If it fails, it's mine. If it works, it's mine. No confusion, no blame, no noise, just direction. See the truth. You see excuses instantly in others, in yourself, and you'll hate the old version of you. Not with emotion, with distance, because you'll realize something brutal. You were never behind. You were just avoiding the weight. So here it is, the line. Cross it, and lost disappears from your vocabulary. Stay on the other side, and nothing changes. No one is coming. No clarity is coming. No permission is coming. If you're still watching, this is the moment. Say it out loud. This is on me. Not tomorrow, not next year, now. Then prove it by doing one thing today that moves your life forward and removes an excuse. Not dramatic. Not perfect. Real. Own it. And don't come back until your actions do the talking. This is where weak people collapse. Not at the start. Not at motivation. Maintenance. Nobody tells you this part. Ownership isolates you. When you stop blaming, you stop bonding with complainers. When you stop making excuses, you lose people who live on excuses. Your circle gets quiet. No drama, no group validation, no shared victim stories, just silence. And most people can't handle silence because silence forces self-confrontation. So they go back to noise, back to complaining, back to, we're all struggling. But listen carefully. Losers need community. Winners need standards. Responsibility doesn't give you friends, it gives you results. Why most people secretly want to be controlled. Here's something uncomfortable. A lot of people don't actually want freedom. They want instructions, deadlines given by others, rules set by someone else. Because freedom means you decide what matters. And deciding what matters means accepting what doesn't. Responsibility removes excuses and fantasies. No, maybe I could have been great. No, I had potential. Just reality. That's terrifying. So people choose jobs they hate, routines they didn't design, lives they can blame. Not because they're trapped, but because they're afraid of owning the outcome. The day you stop explaining yourself. There's a shift that happens when responsibility fully locks in. You stop explaining. You don't justify your path. You don't defend your pace. You don't argue with opinions. Because explanation is a request for approval. And approval is irrelevant when you're accountable to results. People will misunderstand you, label you, project onto you. Let them. Explanation is for people with doubt. Execution is for people with clarity. If this part feels heavy, that's because it is. Responsibility isn't inspiring, it's stabilizing. And stability scares people who are addicted to chaos. But we're not done. Don't share this. Don't talk about it. Just notice who in your life survives when excuses are removed. Your move. Self-respect is built, not felt. This is the layer most people never reach. Most people don't actually respect themselves. People say they have self-respect. They don't. What they have is self-image. Self-image is what you want to believe. Self-respect is what you prove it. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you vote against your own authority. Every time you delay, rationalize, or quit quietly, you teach your nervous system, my word doesn't matter. And once your own word loses value, nothing else holds weight. That's why confidence collapses. That's why discipline feels impossible. That's why people feel hollow. It's not depression. It's disrespecting yourself repeatedly. Responsibility repairs the damage. Self-respect doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from keeping small, brutal promises. Not promises that look good. Promises that hurt. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing when quitting felt justified. Showing up when no one would know you didn't. That's how authority is rebuilt. Slow, unsexy, private. Responsibility is self-respect in action. And once you have self-respect, you don't need motivation. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't beg yourself. You move. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Self-respect removes excuses permanently. Once you know you can rely on yourself, you can't unsee how often you lied before. That guilt is heavy. So people stay weak on purpose. They stay inconsistent on purpose. They keep working on it. Because growth costs identity death. And most people would rather stay familiar than become accountable. Here's the rule. If you say you'll do it, it's done. No mood checks, no mental debates, no self-talk. You either lower the standard or you meet it. But you don't betray it. That one rule creates a dangerous human being. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, pick one promise to yourself that you've been breaking. Small, specific, non-negotiable, then keep it. No announcement, no post, no reward, just execution. Because the moment you respect yourself, the world adjusts. Own it. The point of no return. This is not a conclusion. It's a line you cross. You will never be found, bro. Start. Let's end the lie properly. You're not going to be found. There is no version of life where clarity arrives and saves you. People who are found are just people who stopped asking. They stopped waiting for alignment. They stopped needing certainty. They stopped asking permission from the future. They chose and then endured the cost. That's it. Everything else is entertainment. The costs, most people refuse to pay. Ownership costs comfort. Ownership costs approval. Ownership costs relationships. Ownership costs identity. You will lose versions of yourself you thought you needed. You will outgrow people who liked the old you better. And if you're honest, that's exactly why you delayed. Because responsibility changes the social contract. You stop fitting in, you stop relating, you stop explaining. That's not arrogance. That's separation. The quiet power of finality. At some point, real adults stop experimenting. They don't try things. They decide things. They don't chase excitement. They build inevitability. Inevitability is power. Power isn't loud. It's predictable. Show up long enough and the world stops questioning you. Not because you spoke, but because you stayed. Why this is the last time you feel lost. Once responsibility is absolute, lost has nowhere. Confusion dies under structure. Doubt dies under petition. Fear dies under exposure. You don't need confidence. You need continuity. And continuity is responsibility extended over time. That's maturity. That's dominance. That's peace. This is it. Close this video. Write down one path, not 5, not options. 1. Then commit to it for a period long enough that quitting would embarrass you. Plans, identity. If it works, good. At least it will be yours. If you're lost, it was because you refused responsibility. Now you don't get that excuse anymore. Own it. And don't come back until your life looks different.